What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today is going to be the last video on this PW80 engine rebuild. We're going to do all of the exterior things on it, the clutch and everything on that side, and then the stator and everything on that side. So we'll go ahead and get all that on, and we'll throw it into the other junky bike and see if we can get it to fire up. So let's get going. So first thing we're going to do is going to be the clutch side. So before we get any of that on, we need to do the oil pump. So I said we were going to keep the oil pump on this one, but I decided against it. We're going to put a plug on this one. We have a full oil pump kit. Maybe I'll put it back on that other one that we're still waiting on exhaust and other things for. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and use the plug kit on this. If you want to go ahead and check out that video on how to put that together and take off your old one, go ahead. Should be up top. So all we're going to do, slide this guy in, and then we're going to line them up and put our two new bolts in. Alright, so last thing we're going to do before we start this main geared is going to go ahead and put our last retainer on. That's going to be up here on the shift drum and that fork shaft. So we're going to go ahead, let's tap that down a little. Let's go crazy, it'll go down. There we go. And all this is going to do is set in there just like this. And you got two screws with a number 3 head on it. So let's get that quick, get those set. Alright, once we get that installed, we can move on to the main drive here. So we're going to put this collar back on, and if you look at it, it's got a shoulder on it. That's going to go down. So we'll put a little grease on that. And instead of grease now, we're going to switch over to our assembly lube. So we'll put a little bit of that on there. I don't know if I said it or not, but I used that on the transmission as well. So we seat that down. Next thing we're going to do then is start with this assembly. So we'll get a whole picture and I'll show you the whole picture lined up. Makes it super easy. And this is how I have it lined up over here. Alright, so and then same thing in the picture. So there's your gear all the way down. So the way it goes, gear first. One thing you got to make sure you install correctly, or you'll find out immediately that it's backwards, is this oil pump gear. So that is going to go with the O-ring towards us. I've done this once before where I installed an O-ring towards the what would you call it, the crank. That was not right. So how that's going to go, it's going to set in like that. This O-ring is so tight. We want to keep that in there. Alright, let's get that O-ring set right, and then we'll be back. Alright, now we got that installed. You can see it sticking up, so it's definitely going to give us a seal. So we'll go ahead and set that down. Alright, right after that gear is going to be our keyway. We'll slide that in the keyway slot on the crankshaft. Might have to give it a couple taps with a hammer or a punch. So we'll tap that into place. And on this one, we're going to let it stick up a little bit. So you can tell from this angle. It's sticking up there. Then we'll go ahead and take our inner gear. I've already oiled this one up, and we're going to line that up with our keyway. And then we're going to tap that down, and we're going to tap them all flush to the top. So we might not need to tap it yet. So there, now it's getting tight. That's what we want. So we'll go ahead and just give it, we don't have to go crazy, just a little bit of tapping. Now we got our gear down. Now we're going to tap our keyway down, flush with the rest. Don't have to go crazy. And if I go crazy, I'll knock the camera down again. So next we're gonna go to the outer gear on that one. So we'll put a little bit of lube in there. And that's gonna drop down just like that. I'm gonna spin it around a few times to make sure I get it lube all over. And we'll put it on. This one's like perfect fit, so it's gonna be a little bit of a pain. There's our little extra lube. You can go ahead and wipe that up if you want. So next thing we got is our collard washer. So it's gonna go collar up, flat side down. Then we got our spring washer. You want the concave side down, the dome side up. Might have said that wrong. And then we're gonna throw the nut on. And we'll get that tightened down and we'll move on to the kickstart. Alright, in order to tighten this down, we'll spin, but it'll start spinning the crank. I can show you that quick. So you can see it's spinning with us. And you can see the connecting rod there. So what we want to do is stop that from spinning. So we'll go ahead and throw a towel down in the bottom underneath our connecting rod, right inside there. And that'll stop it from spinning and allow us to tighten our nut. So go ahead and get that going. I didn't get it stopped, so we'll shove it down in there a little more and go. There we go. And then to get it off, we can pull that. We should be able to pull that right out. And we're good. So next thing, we're going to move on to the kickstart. Alright, next thing we got is our kickstart. You'll notice there's a few things to look for on the kickstart. One's going to be this little jet out here. That's going to sit in this little cutout in your case. You got your spring hook here. That's going to hook down here on this little extension. And then you got this eyelet in the plastic. That's going to go ahead and wrap around this little jet out here. So first thing you want to do is line up this and this inside the case, and then we can set the spring back. So we'll go ahead and get everything lined up. And if it doesn't go in perfect, don't worry. We got a little trick to get everything lined up. So once we got it set in there, we don't worry about our spring yet. We're going to go ahead and take our kickstart and we're going to give it a couple rotations. See how it's catching there? Because you can see that clutch shaft, or we call it the, I guess that was the transmission gear. So that's spinning. So now we see that our kickstart is engaging properly. We're lined up and we're sitting on where we need to be. So now we got a lot of tension on that spring. So we just need to grab that spring and bring it back to that jet out. All right. In my opinion, this is one of the harder things to do. Before we lose our battery, I'm going to try and show you. I like to keep that kickstart on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook, if you can see that, I'm going to hook the spring and hold down tight. And I'm going to bring that spring around. And then I'm going to use my finger here, if you can see that. And I'm going to try and lift it up over that thing where it hooks onto. And slide it into place. And one thing you want to do is keep downward pressure on that. Because if you don't, it could just pop all the way back out and you start from step one again. So that's it. Next thing we're going to do is move on to the clutch. Alright, before we move on to the clutch, I forgot about our shifting mechanisms. So first thing we're going to do is put our shifting arm in. This is just an arm with a spring at the bottom and a shoulder bolt. Shoulder bolt's going to go through there. Your spring at the bottom is going to hook on this little bead here. And your little wheel is going to go in the bottom side of your shifting drum. It's a lot easier to do when you do it before you do this part, the main gear drive, but it's not a big deal. All we need to worry about is it faces down. You don't want it facing up like that. Okay, so that way isn't going to work. It needs to be this hook faces down. So we're going to go ahead and put our spring in here first, and then we're going to wrap it around that little bead. And then it might seem a little hard to get it around this and tuck it in here. Just pull the spring wide open and you'll be able to get it where you want it. Down in that bottom spot. Once you get it there, go ahead and throw your shouldered bolt in and tighten that down. Alright, last thing we're going to do is the shift lever, and this is where your actual foot shifting mechanism goes to. So I looked through this over, it looks pretty junky on this side, but this is actually the part that sticks outside the bike. All the inners are in good shape. The spring here is in good shape, the arm's in good shape. So we're going to go ahead and continue to use it. All that you need to know for this one is inside of here, this little square is going to go around this jet out nut. You can actually unscrew this one and replace it, but this was in good shape. And your shift shaft is going to go right through all the way. So we'll go ahead and drop that in. And then when you get here, this arm is going to go in the top half of that shifting drum. So we want to push it back a little bit, and then we'll press it down, and now we're in. Okay? So that's our shifting spot. Okay, now you got that lever in. You can check now to make sure your shifting is working properly. So you can come over here. There's your shifting arm. You can go ahead and take your shifter. Just slide it on there quick. And all we're going to do is shift down all the way to be in neutral. And the way you can tell you're in neutral is if you spin, this is your counter shaft, that's where your sprocket's going to go, and that's your transmission. If you spin them, and they spin together, that means you're in a gear. So we'll go ahead and shift down. And now we're still spinning. And we're still, oh, there it was. So when you spin that side, it's going to spin no matter what. But if you spin this side, you can see that our counter shaft isn't spinning. So that makes us a neutral. And you can tell that I can't go down any further. So we can go up. There we go, first gear. Up again, second gear, and then clicks into third gear. You'll notice that it doesn't click into gear until it starts moving. That's because gear shifting doesn't happen unless you're riding. So if you noticed that when I shifted, nothing happened right away, well, that's because we're not driving. So once you got that, you can go ahead and take that off. All we're going to do is slide the washer on and make sure it's all the way in. There's a little groove right there, and we're going to go ahead and put this little C-clip right in there. So we'll get that in, and we'll flip back over to the other side and do the clutch. Alright, once we got that and the clip on, we'll go ahead and flip her back over, and we'll put the clutch on. So the clutch is real easy. All we're going to do is throw on our thrust plate first, which is just a fancy word for a washer. That's going to go on. I'm going to put a little lube down in there in the bearing. That was a little lot, but that'll be okay. Spin that around. Work it through. Then we'll go ahead and throw our thrust plate down. Okay, that'll go down. Then we'll go ahead and put this, it's a, I don't know what it's called, but it's a spiral. You'll see it, and then there's a hole right there. That's to help get the oil moving around through this. So we'll put a little bit. Let's put a little bit in there. Good enough. And we'll go ahead and throw that down. Let that slide on. And then we're going to, I lost battery there, not sure where it was, but we're onto the clutch. We had our thrust, they call it a thrust washer there, it's just a fancy name. Then we have this little spiral, I don't know what that's called, never looked it up, not too worried. And then after you get all that on, you're going to go ahead and throw your clutch on. Just line that up with the teeth on your transmission shaft, and it should fall right into place. Then you have another spring washer, just like that. Put the dome side up. And last but not least, you're going to have another nut. So we'll tighten that down, and we'll be able to put the side cover on. Alright, so last thing's going to be is our side cover. We're not going to paint this one right now. We're just going to replace the parts that need replaced. So first is going to be our oil fill up. There's that. And we got a fresh new one. There is no O-ring in our new one, so make sure you check for that. So we'll go ahead and pull this O-ring out of the old one and put it in the new one. Next thing we're going to do is change out that seal, so we'll just pop that one out and we'll go ahead and pop a fresh one in. And last but not least, we got us a new gasket. So we'll go ahead and put this one on. I'm not too concerned with this one. You know what? Since we're going to be riding a bunch, I'm going to go ahead and put some Yama Bond around all of that, and also a little bit around this. I know you don't have to. I'm going to put it on there, and I'm going to make it flat. And on the other side as well, flatten it out. Not a huge bead, just a little bit. So we'll put that on quick, put that on, and we'll screw it down. Alright, now we got that tightened over. Let's actually flip over to the other side, and we'll go ahead and put the stator plate on, and we'll go ahead and put the flywheel on. I did get some replacement screws for that stator plate. I don't remember on the disassemble. I didn't show a full takedown of the engine. I think I'm going to post a video of that at some point. It's super easy. I probably won't actually, just because it's a reverse of this. But we'll go ahead and put our stator plate on. There's our 2 fresh screws. What you're going to want to do is line up this grommet with your hole up here, or your cutout. And then your screws and your holes should kind of fall into place. So we're off by a 1/4 inch, not even. So we'll go ahead and slap our screw in there. And our screw in here. And we'll tighten those down. Alright, once we get that on, the last thing we have install wise is going to be our flywheel. All we need to do is install our, I forget what they call this guy. If I could remember off the top of my head, it's just another keyway, but I think there's a funny name for this one. But here it is. It's going to go in moon side down, or moon side to the shaft, and square side out. And then this should kind of magnet down into place. And just make sure you're lined up there. Get a little light on it. Yep, it's lined up. So you can either give it a few taps. I don't like to tap it just because of the whole magnet thing that you learned in elementary. You hit a magnet too hard, it'll lose its whatever. I don't know if that's true. Let me know in the comments. I'm no physicist, chemist. I don't really know. Magnetist. Well, one thing I am sure of, and I said it in the last video, of losing things. So let me find the nut that goes on here, and we'll get it on. Alright, couldn't find it, so I actually came over to look at where it might be, because it should be. Number 17, there it is, flywheel nut. I even had a note on here, stator screw need new. So, like I said in the last video, this is super, super helpful. If you're going to get anything out of this, take that. So, we'll get this washer on, we'll get this nut on, and we should be squared away there. Alright, last thing we're going to do, new sprocket. So if you look at the old one, pretty shot, missing some teeth. So we'll go ahead and throw the new one on. Just like that. Clip over top. In the groove. And all the way in the groove. There we go. And we're good there. Last thing we need to do before we button this baby up is go ahead and throw this cover on. And then we're going to put our reed assembly on. And we can go ahead, fill it up, put our top end on, obviously. But if you look, we're good there. That was our main problem when we first got it. All right, a couple more things to button this up. We're gonna go ahead and install the reed valve. I'm going to leave the gasket that's on there, but I'm also going to add a small bead of some gasket maker, the Yama Bond, Yama Lube, whatever it's called. Nothing crazy. I'll let you see. And I'm also going to flatten it out then with my finger. So we'll run it. Flatten that out. It doesn't need to be a huge space, because all it's going to do is hit this part on the gasket. So we'll tighten that one down. We got 4 screws there. Oh, sorry, we need to put the top on. So there's also a gasket there. I'm going to run a little bead on top of that. I know you don't have to. Someone's probably going to disagree or tell me I shouldn't, which you might be right, but I've done it like this before plenty of times and had no issues. I really just think that this is like an insurance policy, extra sealing. Here I like to flatten it out because this is the intake and I don't want any coming or getting into the engine. So we'll set that on there just like that. And we'll go ahead and tighten that down. And we got our 4 screws here. And we should be good. Alright, now that that's done, we'll go ahead and install the cylinder in the head. Go ahead and check out the video I did on that. Real easy. 2-stroke ones are real simple. No timing, no cams, no nothing. Just the piston, a needle bearing in here, and some rings. And it's really simple. So we'll get that on, and then I think before we call it a night, we'll go ahead and hook up, we'll hook this up and make sure we're getting spark. And then maybe we'll go ahead and hook up a carburetor tonight and see if we can get it fired up, running while it's off the bike. So let's get this top end on and get moving. Alright, so now we got it all back together. I went ahead and threw it on the old 80 I got. Had no engine on it. The other one's still over there in pieces. So I got everything hooked up. I put a little fuel in it. Put a new spark plug on the front there. There was the top end I said about putting on. Real easy if you want to check out that video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and I'm just going to use the drill on this one. I got the old 17 mil hooked up. And we're just going to put it right on the flywheel nut there and give it a go. So let's go. Alright, we're set up. Let's get it a go. For now, not too bad. So, that'll do it there. PW80 engine rebuild. Not too crazy, not too wild. We definitely got a lot more work to do on the bike, so keep up with the channel and we'll keep putting out videos. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.